When it comes to Linux, many analysts tend to get a bit overwhelmed, me included, as I am by no means an expert on Linux. But it is important for us to try our best and understand where certain logs are stored, so then we can analyze them and do what we do best. In today's video, I'll be going over another CyberDefenders lab called Hammered, where we'll dig into a bunch of different Linux logs to reveal suspicious activity on a web server honeypot. As an FYI, I will be using Ubuntu for this lab, and there may be some commands that you might not be aware of. And if you want to learn more about these commands, please watch the hands-on walkthrough playlist that I have added in the description down below, as I do go over in more detail as to why I am using those commands. Let's get started. To begin, you want to head over to cyberdefenders.org and sign up for an account if you haven't done so already. Once you've logged into your account, you want to search up Hammered, and this is the one that we'll select. And let's take a look at the scenario. It says, this challenge takes you into the world of virtual systems and confusing log data. In this challenge, as a SOC analyst, figure out what happened to this web server honeypot using the logs from a possibly compromised server. And it appears that some of the challenge files are kern.log, auth.log, daemon.log, dmessage, and apache2. I'll go ahead and click on Join Lab and download lab files. Click on OK, and I'll save this into our downloads directory. Heading over to the downloads directory, I'll right click this, go under 7-zip, and click on extract to this directory. The password is cyberdefenders.org. Let's go into the newly extracted directory. Now I do have Windows Subsystem for Linux installed, and that is what I'll be using to analyze this file. Now I know I did mention that I'll be using Ubuntu, but Windows Subsystem for Linux is pretty much the same thing. If you plan on following along, you can set up Windows Subsystem for Linux if you're on a Windows operating system, but you can always use a virtual machine and spin up Ubuntu. The first thing I'm going to do is type in ls-la, which will show me a list of everything that's under this directory. And currently I do see auth.log, daemon.log, debug, dmessage, dpackage, font config, kern.log, messages, secure, udev, and user.log. There are also 1, 2, and 3 directories that are found under the extracted directory. If this is your first time analyzing a Linux server, this could be quite overwhelming. But what you must understand before diving into any investigation is to have an objective in mind. What is it that you're trying to find? See, for me, since I don't know exactly what to look for, I would always start my investigation by identifying any successful authentications, and then proceed from there. But for the sake of this lab and me not wanting to make this video super long, let's briefly understand what these log files may consist of, and then we'll start tackling the questions. Starting with auth.log, this keeps authentication events that include success and failed logins. The daemon log keeps track of background services. Debug stores messages related to debugging for troubleshooting purposes. Dmessage captures information about the boot process, hardware detection, and driver initialization. Dpackage or dpkg contains information about your installed package. Font config are related to fonts. The kern.log keeps kernel logs and warning informations. Messages can contain system services and also background processes. The secure log, since this doesn't have anything, I'll go ahead and just skip it, but it can contain authentications as well. For udev, this contains device events, which can be, but not limited to, network cards, external drives, USBs, mouses, keyboards, etc. And finally, we have the user.log. And because it is only 213 bytes, I'll go ahead and just cat that out. So user.log. And taking a look, it contains information about time zones. And taking a look at the time zone, it is set to America/Los Angeles, aka Pacific time. With that out of the way, let's begin looking into question number 1. Go ahead and expand this here. It says, which service did the attackers use to gain access to the system? When it comes to gaining access into a system, one of the more common ways is through valid credentials. Let's take a look into the auth.log. I'll clear out my screen here and type in cat auth.log. And if I hit enter, we can see a bunch of events here. Starting from the very bottom, which is the latest event, we see that there is a session closed for the user of root. There's also a sudo command from the user of user1. And we do see failed logins. Scrolling up here. Wow, that's a lot of session opened and session closed for the user of root. I'll go ahead and clear out the screen again, but this time I am going to still cat out the auth.log, but I will perform a grep-I and type in accepted. And we do see a lot of these successful logins, and it does make sense because this particular server is a honeypot. Likely these accounts are using common passwords. And if we take a look, it says SSHD. So what that tells me is that the answer to question number 1 is through SSH. Which service did the attackers use to gain access to the system? SSH. On to question number 2. What is the operating system version of the targeted system? One word. Now, if we go over to our Ubuntu here and clear out the screen again, type in ls. Taking a look at the log files, we know that messages can contain system-related events. So what I'll do here is open up the messages, but this time I'll be using a command called head. This command will only output the first 10 lines, message, and hit enter. And let's take a look. On the fourth event, so 1, 2, 3, 4, we do see Linux version 2.6.24, where it is using Ubuntu 4.2.4-1 Ubuntu 3. And this is likely the answer to our question number 2. Copy that out. And yeah, what is the operating system version of the targeted system? The operating system is Ubuntu, and this right here, 4.2.4, is the version. Go ahead and paste that in. Question number 3, what is the name of the compromised account? Well, if I were to guess, it is probably root, but let's take a look at the log files. And to obtain this answer, I am going to take a look into our auth.log file again. I'll type in cat auth.log, and I'll pipe it into grep-I accepted. To help me organize some of these events, I'll hit the up arrow key and add in a pipe, and this time I'll be using a command called awk. What this command will do is output a value within a particular column, and that column can be whatever I choose. So for example, I'll put a single quote with a curly bracket, print, and to select my column, I'll just say $1. This is going to select column number 1. If I were to close it out and put another quotes, we get column number 1. If I wanted to include column number 2, all I need to do is add in a comma, $2. And now it includes column 1 and column 2. So let me go back over to grep-I accepted. And from here, I'll start building out my query. What I want to do is grab the date, the time, IP addresses, and the user in the auth.log. So the date and time is in column number 1, 2, and 3. For the IP address, let's see which column this one is in. So this is the third one, 4th, 5th, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That means the IP address is under column number 11, $11. And yeah, we get our IPs. Perfect. Let's run this one more time and grab our user as well, which is in column number 9. I'll add in $3 because that is the actual time, comma, $9 for the user account, comma, and $11 for the IP address. And there you go. Now we have a much cleaner output, in my opinion. I'll go ahead and save this out to a file called successlogins.txt. Type in ls, and we should have a text file called successlogins. If I were to just cat that out, we get it right here. Now, if I scroll all the way up here, starting from the very top, actually, let me clear out the screen just so it's a lot easier to see. Cat successlogins.txt, and at the very top, let's follow the chain of events. We can see that there are a couple of private IPs here. So the 192.168.126.1, there is 10.0.1.2, and here we see our first external IP address. And this was on March 18th using user 1. What this means is that user 1 could be our compromised account. But if I were to continue to scroll down just a bit, we do see our root account logging in from a private IP address. However, if we continue scrolling down and see when the next root account was logged in, we can see it is coming from an external IP address of 219.150.161.20. And this to me seems a bit more worrying compared to user 1. What I'll do is I'll take these two IP addresses, so the 219 IP and the first external IP that we saw, the 76.191. And I'll open up a notepad, paste that in. So I'll type in root, and let's go ahead and copy this one. And this is user 1. Now let's do a little bit of OSINT to see where these IPs are originating from. To do this, I'll use a site called ipinfo.io. And I went ahead and pasted in the 219 address, and I do see it as Shanghai, China. That could be quite suspicious. Now, if I were to compare this to the 76, let's take a look here. This one is Santa Rosa, California, United States. If I were to compare the two, I would lean towards the Shanghai, China IP address as the more malicious one. In other words, the account of root being compromised. But it is hard to say just from this alone, because there are so many different external IP addresses that we saw, and without any additional context from the environment, it can make this a bit difficult. Now, in the real world, I would have dug in a bit more into these events by creating a timeline and seeing what the users 1 to 3 had done upon login. But again, for the sake of me not wanting to make this video incredibly long, the answer to the question is likely root. Go over to CyberDefenders and type in root. And that is correct. If you're interested in building a timeline, I do teach this in my course called the MyDFIR SOC Analyst course, which I'll leave a link down below for you to learn more. Moving on to question number 4, consider that each unique IP represents a different attacker. How many attackers were able to get access to the system? I'm questioning what they meant by get access to the system. Do they mean with the account of root or the other user accounts like user 1, user 2, and user 3? I'm going to go with the user root because usually in these CTFs, they build on top of each other. So on question number 3, we had it as root. And then question number 4 says, consider that each unique IP represents a different attacker. And yeah, I'm going to assume that how many attackers were able to get access to the system using the account root. Let's do that here. I'll clear out the screen and I can just hit the up arrow key a couple times. Essentially, we do want to use the awk command again, but I'll add in another pipe in between the grep and awk, and then add in another grep, but this time I am going to search for the user account of root. Hit enter. And now our output is filtered for only root. Since the question did mention unique IP addresses, I am going to only select column number 11. This will only print IP addresses. Now what I can do is type in sort, pipe it, put in unique to deduplicate all of the IP addresses and then hit enter. And there is a private IP address here, which I will ignore. There is 121, 122, 151. Is there any other private IPs here? And there does not appear to be so. Okay, clear out the screen. What I'll do is instead of counting each line one by one, I am going to use a command called wc-l, which is a word count and it will list it out. And the output is 18. So that tells me that there are 18 lines. Now we did see one private IP address, so I will -1. And the answer is going to be 17 that I will be using. Question number 4, 17. And that is incorrect. Maybe they wanted the unique usernames instead of IPs? Interesting. Okay, let's try this here. I'm going to hit the up arrow key a couple times. Actually, you know what? Let's do grep-i accepted and point it over to auth.log. Hit enter, and these are all of the users that successfully logged in. Hit the up arrow key, and I will type in awk, and let's select, the username was column number 9, I believe. And yes, it was. Perfect. Let's do a sort, unique, and do a word count again. And we have 6 unique users. Out of curiosity, what are the users? Okay, DHG, Fido, root, user 1, 2, and 3. I will try the answer with 6. And that is correct. Okay, moving on. Question number 5. Which attacker's IP address successfully logged into the system the most number of times? Again, I am going to assume that they are talking about the root account, since this account is the account that is likely compromised. Hit the up arrow key, and I am going to remove my word count, the unique, and the sort. Now, this question did mention IP addresses, I believe. Which attacker's IP address successfully logged in? Okay, yeah. So IP is listed under column 11. And right now we're looking for every accepted user account. But we're only interested in the root account. I'll type in grep-i to ignore case sensitivity, type in root, and let's add in a pipe. And now we got all of the IPs that use the root account to successfully log in. Let's do another pipe. I'll type in sort and do another unique, but this time I'll include a -c to count how many times the same IP was observed. Do another pipe, sort-nr. And looking at the top, we do get 219.150.161.20, which again is the IP address that we found that first logged into root. So I'll copy that IP address and let's try that. And that is correct. Perfect. Question number 6, how many requests were sent to the Apache server? Now, if I type in ls, we do see a couple of directories here. There is the Apache 2, apt, and fsck. The question was asking how many requests were sent to the Apache server. Let's go and change into the directory of Apache 2. Type in ls and we get 3 log files. The first one is the www-access log. We have an error log and a media log. The access log is going to capture all of the requests. I'll cat out the file of www-access log and then I'll hit enter. Here we can see that there are some get requests, connects, and post, and yeah, just a bunch others here. Now they don't really specify what requests, so let's simply count out how many lines there are in this particular log file. And we can do this by piping it into wc-l. And there are 365 lines. In other words, 365 individual requests. Type in 365 and submit. Question number 7, how many rules have been added to the firewall? Ooh, interesting. How many rules have been added to the firewall? Now, let's just say I'm not entirely sure where these firewall changes are located in, but I do know for a fact that there is a command called iptables that is used to configure firewall rules. So what I'll do here is type in grep-i and search up for iptables. And now I can type in an asterisk to look for every log file. However, because we do have directories within this particular directory of hammered, which is our extracted directory, we can also include a -r flag to recursively search. And let's hit enter here. Taking a look here, we have a couple of lines that contain IP tables. And at the very left-hand side, we can see that the contents are coming from auth.log. So this right here is a quick hack, I guess, to quickly search for a particular string that you know for sure exists, but you're not entirely sure where it is located in. Going back over to the question, it says, how many rules have been added to the firewall? And starting from this -a, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that means there are 6 rules that have been added. Question number 8. One of the downloaded files to the target system is a scanning tool. Provide the tool name. If you recall, I'll type in ls-la. Looking at the dpkg.log file, you'll find all of the packages that are installed. I'll cat out the dpkg.log file, and let's take a look at what kind of packages are installed. There is a status called unpacked, have configured, and installed. Let's grep for this particular string. I'll hit the up arrow key, pipe it into grep-i, and installed. Now we can see all of the packages here. So there's yum, Python, there's this tools, there's libc, xm, sudo. Scrolling up here, we do have, right here, we have nmap. And if you're not aware of what nmap is a tool which is commonly used for scanning assets. Go ahead and type in nmap as the answer for question number 6. Number 9, when was the last login from the attacker with the IP address of 219.150? Oh, this is the one that we took a note of. And they want the format as the month, day, year, hour, minutes, seconds, and AM. Okay, that's fairly easy. Let's clear out the screen. And we can find this information under the auth.log. So grep-i Let's look for accepted because it's successful logins. They want to find the last login from this attacker. And I'll point it over to my auth.log. Let's add in another grep, and I will surround this in quotes because it is an IP address. And this is 219.150.161.20. And let's close that out. The last successful login was on April 19th at 5:56:05 a.m. Following the same format, this is going to be 04 for April 19th, 2010, 05:58:56:05 a.m. Now you might be asking, Steven, how do you know it's 2010? Well, if we go back over to our Apache, so cd apache, and let me just cat out the www-access. The last log here is 24th of April, 2010. And by using this, we can infer that the year is 2010. Question number 10. The database displayed 2 warning messages. Provide the most important and dangerous one. Okay? Depending on who you're talking to, this might be a bit subjective, but let's take a look nonetheless. When it comes to a database, this could be part of a background service, and the log that contains information about background services is called the daemon log. So if I type in ls, there is a daemon.log. I'll cat that out, daemon.log. And let's take a look. Now we do see that there is a MySQL user, and the MySQL is a database, and we do see a warning. So it says MySQL.user contains 2 root accounts without password. Okay, this is likely the message. The database displayed 2 warning messages. Provide the most important and dangerous one. I mean, 2 root accounts without passwords is quite dangerous, but they did mention that it displayed 2 messages. Does that mean I can grep? And let's take a look here. I'll just search for mysql.user and see. Wow, there are quite a bit of messages here. But you know what? Let's go ahead and try copying this here, and we'll paste that in as the answer. And that is correct. Awesome. Question number 11. Multiple accounts were created on the target system. Which one was created on April 26, 04:43:15? When it comes to Linux systems, you can identify accounts that were created by searching for the keyword of user add. User add. And we can do our cheat code again. So grep-i user add. And you know what? Let's just put in an asterisk. Hit enter. And you might notice that I didn't include the -r flag. If I don't include the -r, you can see that grep complains that it says, hey, Apache 2 is a directory, and apt is a directory, and lastly, fsck is a directory. So what that tells me is that it did not do a recursive search. Now, if I were to include the -r, grep will no longer complain and perform a recursive search. Going back over to the question here, it says, which one was created on April 26, 4:43:15? April 26, 4:43:15. The new username was Windestroy? Oh, Windestroy. Okay. Yeah, that is the username. Windestroy. I did not butcher that name at all. So go ahead and submit that. And finally, our last question. Few attackers were using a proxy to run their scans. What is the corresponding user agent used by this proxy? User agents. This we can find under our request. And if you recall, the request can be found under the Apache directory. Let's change into the Apache, clear out the screen, and let's cat out our www-access.log. And taking a look here, this is our user agent. So what column is that in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So our user agent is under column 12. Let's type in awk print $12, close that out with a quote, and there you go. Let's do a sort, unique, and sort again. And take a look at that. We have a PXY scan D. To me, this looks pretty suspicious. There's also WordPress, Mozilla, and Apple PubSub. I'll go ahead and copy this PXY scan, and let's search it up. What exactly is PXY scan? Clicking on the first link. Under our description, we do see it is a IRC network proxy scanner. Awesome. What that tells me is that this is likely the answer to question number 12. Click on submit. And just like that, we completed our lab. That was a fun lab, and I am aware that I did go a bit quicker than usual, so if I did lose you, I apologize in advance. If you want to learn a bit more about the commands that I used, please feel free to follow along with my other hands-on walkthroughs as I do explain them a little bit more. Lastly, it is important to create a timeline to really understand what exactly is going on, as labs such as these are good to practice your skills, but you'll need to put in extra effort and create a timeline to really see the bigger picture. If you want to learn more about how to create a timeline, do search up timeline analysis and go from there. Or you can enroll into my course if you're interested and in the financial position to do so. That is it for the video, and I hope that you found that informative. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribe if you want to. Remember to stay curious and do things differently.